Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again. We're in the backyard where landscape is not quite complete, but today we're working inside. Barry Driscoll, my electrician, is hooking up an antique light fixture in the kitchen, and also we're looking at dimmer controls from Lightolier that allow us to dim the lights in different parts of the kitchen. Bob Ryley's here. He's working with Jimmy Shields on restoring the staircase, putting back those balusters. In the master suite, we've got some beautiful tile from Oregon that's already been installed in my wife's bath, and we're going to grout it today. Also, we're looking at some paneling. Stick around. It's good to have you home again.
Bob Vila's home again.
These are milk glass shades from an old gas fixture that I've had in storage for probably 20 years. And it's an unusual one because it's basically an upside-down T shape. It came from an old butler's pantry in a Back Bay, Boston building that I converted to apartments in the early 70s. I've had it all these years. I've always wanted to use it. We're going to put it in this kitchen. Barry Driscoll, our electrician, is helping us rewire it. Now, Barry, this is an unusual fixture, and you've got 2 points of light. What have you done already?
What we've had to do is we've had to use this ball and chain and actually sleeve it through the old gas copper pipe, seeing that the diameter inside is so small.
Inside this particular pipe?
Yes, we've had to run a wire back from the canopy, where the canopy will be at the ceiling, back to each socket. And we've used this to pull it through the sleeve.
Okay, now what kind of wire is this?
This is just small lamp cord, regular lamp cord.
Okay, that's all
We've marked each end with white tape to represent our neutral conductor, and our regular conductor is going to be our hot.
And the sockets themselves are probably from the early 1900s, because this was a gas fixture and then it was converted to electrical use probably around 1910 or 1915. But these sockets that you see right here are in perfectly good condition.
What we're going to do, Bob, is we're going to put a conductor, our neutral on the neutral side, and our hot on the hot side of the socket.
Okay.
Once we secure our conductors down, we're going to put the top of the socket back on and push it into our light.
And that snaps shut.
Snaps tight.
And you're done. Okay, then what about the rest of the route through here?
What we're going to do with the conductors is we're going to pull them through.
This is, again, the old gas pipe, which is a very, very thin diameter piping.
We're going to back it off to the left a little bit.
Why is that?
And then thread it back on to the right, just so we don't pinch any conductors inside of the old pipe.
And then this is basically a decorative brass sleeve that goes over the whole thing, right, Barry?
You got it.
Let's let you put it in there.
We've marked the neutrals on each end, just so we have no confusion later on when we go to hang the fixture.
Okay. And then, of course, the canopy will go up here. So are we ready to try hooking it up on the ceiling?
We're ready to go.
There you go. Okay, now the first thing is to actually attach the white metal bar. What do you call that?
This is the fixture bar.
The fixture bar to the box. And that, of course, bears the weight of the fixture. This probably doesn't weigh more than a couple of pounds. Okay, now which wires go with which up there, Barry?
Now, a neutral conductor, which is our white, will go to both of our whites that we've marked from previously.
Okay, so both of those whites go to the white. Shorten them up and then just put a wire nut on them, right?
Now, we've made sure to shut the circuit off at the electrical panel.
Yeah, this is on a separate circuit from all the recessed lights that are in the ceiling.
Yes. We'll make up our neutral conductor first, which we always do to make sure there's no load coming off the light bulbs, which would be in the fixture.
So both the neutrals from the light fixture go to that one white wire.
Yes. Those are the ones we marked earlier. Once we connect our hot, we'll be ready to put our canopy on and liven it right up.
Okay.
Tuck the wires up, get them out of the way. Once we secure all the wires, put the canopy right up and we're ready to go.
All right, and we're ready to put the shades on.
Thanks, Bob.
These are the original old milk glass. And let's try one of these nice large format bulbs, which go very, very nicely with this design. And we're ready to switch it on.
Okay, Bob, we're all set. Do the honors.
All right. Oh, that's beautiful. That's great. All right, next we're going to talk about dimmers. Now let's meet Penny Henderson, our lighting consultant from Lightolier. Hi.
Hi, Bob. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. And we really needed your help because, as in many remodelings, the architect here has specified well over a dozen points of light throughout the kitchen ceiling in all the different areas. And your job is to help us figure out how to control them.
Yes, it is, Bob. And you really do need lighting controls. In the same way that you wouldn't buy a stereo without a volume control on it, you shouldn't have a nice lighting design without having good lighting controls.
Right. And what kind of control system have we put in?
We have here a system called Multiset. It operates with a variety of individual wall box dimmers that are remotely located in your pantry.
Okay.
And then we have these keypads onto which I've programmed some light levels for the activities that are going to happen in this space.
And the keypads can be, we have several of the keypads throughout the room, right?
Yes, you do. You have one at each of the entrances so that you have convenient ways to turn the lights on.
So how many different options do we have?
This keypad gives you 5 selections plus off.
And how have you laid it out in here?
I've programmed these for the activities that happen in the space. This top button is your bright general ambient light level that you would use most days when a lot of the family is working in the kitchen.
Everything's on.
Everything's on, pretty full.
Then what?
On this next button, I've programmed a light level just for cooking. It brings the lights down over the dining area and leaves the lights high over the workspace so that the person home alone is cooking with plenty of light.
Now, once you've finished cooking, what do you press?
As soon as you finish cooking, you press the next button, and that takes you to a dining scene that brings the lights up over the table and around the beautiful cabinetry and brings the light level down over the work area so that even if you leave your pots and pans out there, it's dark and no one looks at it.
And then what?
The next light level is just for cleanup. It brings the lights up over the sink.
Yeah.
And the last light level is your milk and cookies run. It gives you enough light to get into the kitchen without stumbling over anything late at night.
That's my favorite one. Yeah.
Sure is.
Thanks for your help.
You're very welcome.
Okay, we've got to break for some messages, and when we come back, we're going to be working on the balusters in the staircase with Ryley. Stick around. Now, one of the most intricate parts of the demolition of this house involved taking the staircase apart and taking all these balusters and handrails and having them dipped and stripped, and now they're repainted, and Bob Ryley's here to help us get it all back together.
Hi, Bob.
Not an easy job.
No, it's not, but it's not that difficult either.
Well, the difficult thing was cutting these out. These handrails were all bolted through.
They're through bolted, right? We took
Yeah.
it off with the reciprocating saw.
Exactly.
And we're going to put them together with screws now.
Okay.
And where this newel post is 4 inches deep, what I had to do...
And it's hollow.
It's hollow, right. So I had to drill some holes on this side here so that it will allow our screws to get through.
Okay.
So actually, this is kind of a two-man job. If you could just center it
Is that
right
on the mark?
that center line, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, and now repeat the process on the other newel post here, right?
Yeah.
What kind of drill is that?
This is a, well, the bit is a 3/8 bit.
Yeah, it's a Forstner bit?
It's a, yeah. And
There you go.
what I've got here is, there's a hole cutter right there.
Right.
That
Corresponding
fits-
size, right?
Right, so when we're done, we can fill these holes, and which we really don't have to worry about here because it's going to be painted, but if
Yeah,
this
but
will...
it's basically it's a hole cutter
Yeah,
and a plug cutter so that you can plug them up after you've driven the screw in.
okay, so how does that, does that look centered?
That is centered.
Okay. Okay.
Sounds good, yep. Okay, so now are you going to plug those up?
Yeah, put a little glue on them.
This, as you were saying, is not that important to use the same wood if it's painted, but if we were using natural wood, you want to match it up.
that set and come back and sand it.
Okay. Now, Ryley, some would say that this is backwards. How are you going to get the spindles in here, the balusters, into the pre-cut holes in the floor and in the bottom of the rail?
Right, well, what we've done is cut the dowels down so we have just basically 3/16 of an inch or so on the bottom.
And the actual hole is much deeper than that.
Hole is deeper, but that's all we really need to secure it.
Yeah.
And we've cut it tight enough so that we can get it up, get the top up in there,
Into the slot in the railing.
and then just pull it down. And that's it.
Yeah.
But I want to glue that in
And you
there.
want to drop a bit of glue into each one of these holes.
Right.
Okay.
There.
Right.
That's going to hold it.
And keep on keeping on. Let's check in over on this side with Jim Shields, who's working on a similar problem. But Jim, these all involve a curve as well as an angle. How are you putting them in here?
Well, I'm just sliding them in. These came originally, putting them in the same order. They came out.
That's the most important thing. When we removed all of these, we took them out in order. We put numbers on each spindle so that
Yeah,
when they went to the strippers, they had a number
Yeah, they're all engraved.
engraved into the top of each one. And so clearly the most important element is having them fall back into the exact location.
Glue.
They fit in only about barely 1/8 of an inch, so here we do have to.
Give them a couple of tacks.
That's the toughest one to fit.
Yeah. Just want
There
to
you
make
go.
sure it's nice and level when you come.
Good. Now, this is one of the prettiest details in the whole house, I think. And that looks real good, Ryley.
Nice.
A couple more to go. We got to break for some messages. When we come back, we're going to be seaming a carpet. Stick around. We're up here on the 3rd floor, and our interior designers chose a carpeting that almost imitates the look of sisal, but it's actually nylon. And the idea here is that we've got high traffic areas for teenagers. I've got 2 of them. They're going to be visiting. They're going to be having parties up here. But anyhow, let's meet Chris Flynn from Pulsifer Kingston Company here in Boston,
Bob.
right?
How are you?
Chris?
Excellent, thanks.
Pulsifer Kingston is one of the oldest carpet installers in America, I believe.
Yep, it's the oldest in Boston, I know that.
Yeah. And what you got here is, well, what kind of carpet is this?
Well, this is a tight, low-level loop carpet. It's
Made
a
of
nylon.
nylon,
It
right.
should hold up really well in a high-traffic area like this. I
Yeah.
think the color will hide the dirt really nice.
Right.
And it's woven, so what I'm trying to do is open up the rows. It's a loop pile as opposed to a cut pile.
A cut pile is a more plush carpet, and when you're putting a seam together with a normal plush like that, it's a different deal.
It's a different deal. You can use a straight edge. It's not imperative that you get in between the rows.
But here, with this kind of a fiber loop, it's a continuous kind of loop,
Exactly.
right?
It's one loop for each row, and the rows are straight, so we like to put the seam right down the row. That will be your best bet for the seam. So what I'm doing with my screwdriver is I've marked where I want the seam to be. I'm opening up the yarns. Then I'm going to take my push knife, slide that right down the row I've just pushed, and that'll give me a nice straight edge. And it'll be right where the carpet was made to seam, as opposed to cutting across any yarns. Let me just open this up.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
Now that's the ideal spot for a seam.
And now, before we go any further, we have to do the same thing on the other side,
Yep.
right?
You'll notice there's 2 different rows. There's a high row and a low row.
Yes.
Obviously, you want to make sure you're on
On the low row.
the right one.
And we'll get there before you.
Okay. Do the same thing over here. And now the next step would be we need to treat these edges. Because it's such a high traffic area, you don't want to run into any of this.
You don't want to have any loose yarn.
Right, you
yeah.
want to make, that'll just seal everything up super nice.
And what do you use to seal it?
We use a latex, it's actually called seam sealer.
Uh-huh.
That's what it was designed for. Let me just get the end of this.
There you go.
Carpet cuts nice on a row. And we just apply just a thin bead of this
To the edges.
right along the edge.
Okay. Okay, now that that's dried, what's the next step?
Now we're ready to put the silicone heat seam tape underneath the seam.
Oh, this is the stuff that smells funny, right?
Yeah, actually this is a good product that's supposed to be real environmentally friendly.
Oh, good.
Let me just rip that off. We'll tuck it right under there. Okay. Now I'm just going to have to ask you to step off for a
Yes.
minute so I can get this piece in position. We put that halfway underneath it.
Kick it up to...
Right, bring it
Where
up
it
nice
butts.
and butt. Kind of make a dry run of making the actual seam just to make sure everything lines up nice. There's a couple small bows to the carpet, but we can certainly work those out.
Okay.
And now we're ready to actually start seaming.
And now this is the relatively dangerous part because you've got a very hot iron there.
Okay. This tape melts pretty quickly. And once this is cooled, you will not be able to pull it apart. All we like to do is give it a couple seconds for that tape to melt.
How hot is that iron?
Degrees-wise, I don't know, but hot enough that you wouldn't want to touch it.
Yeah, it's hotter than your standard iron for clothes.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. And now you can see how that tape's melted nicely.
exactly.
I push it the length of the iron. And then we'll just take this and work it right into it. This carpet seams up really nicely. What I also like to do once I get a little ways is put some weight on it just
Some
to
weight
keep
on
it
it.
flat. Make sure the glue presses into the back of the rug. For that, I just use my tool bag. I put it on a scrap of carpet.
That's a nice touch.
Well, I wouldn't want to get your new rug dirty. We'll just continue this procedure down the length of the seam.
Sure. And you can still feel it's hot, but you can't see the seam. Now on this side, you've got to actually start kicking it before you can put it on the
Yep.
tackless.
Now that the seam has cooled down a little, I can take my stretch
Okay,
using my knee kicker.
and I should get my weight off of there. Thanks a lot, Chris. We got to break for some messages. Don't go away. Now we're checking in with Eddie Zawisko from Easy Masonry, who's doing yet another tile installation for me. And what kind of grout is it we're putting in this bathroom, Eddie?
This is a sanded floor grout. It's just mixed with water, no additives.
But
It's specially meant for
it's
floors.
specially meant for floors, yeah. And the sand is already in it. But the color choice is perfect because this is a tile that is almost a variegated pinky salmon color. There's a lot of variety to it. And when you lay the field tiles, you can really see it. But what really, really sold us, and my wife especially fell in love with this tile, is all the special little animals. They're made out in the Pacific Northwest by a group of artists, and you can see the herons against all the cattails and some of these relief tiles, and then lots of special accent tiles like the turtle and the snap, what do you call it, the dragonfly and the little bunny rabbit, and even the wind blowing across the top in a little frieze. And we found them, of course, at Country Floors in New York. Where else? Beautiful job, Eddie. Hey, we're running out of time. I hope you can join me next week. We're going to be in this area of the house, putting some special finishes in the master bedroom walls, paneling a closet, and outside we'll be doing the front yard landscaping. So then I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again.